Okay. First, let me turn down the music a little bit more. I want to make sure that we can, like, hear everything. And I might just turn it off. Yeah, I'll just mute it for now. Like, I don't need it to be playing. But we definitely want to hear, right, what's going on, so...
Tonight on 16 by 9. Inside an ultra-Orthodox Jewish sect in Canada.
People that join the community is because the community is what it is.
Child protection workers allege abuse and neglect.
We discovered houses that were dirty, garbage all around, some mattresses that were soaked in urine.
Leaders say they are persecuted for religious beliefs.
Child Protection Services decided to take our children.
Investigating the true story behind the Lev Tahor veil.
I know Lev Tahor, it's a cult.
It's not true. It's not true.
If you don't want to take the way that we teach here in the community, so bye-bye.
Here's Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and welcome to 16 by 9. When the ultra-Orthodox Jewish sect called...
So, one thing I want to make very clear is, like, when we're talking about ultra-Orthodox, what that means is what in, and I think that Katie, if she were to pop into chat, well, maybe I should change it instead to Canadian cult. Well, see, I'm afraid of putting Jewish cults, because, you know, like, that could be read the wrong way, even though that's what it is, right? But, like, you know how people are on the internet, right? But what ultra-Orthodox means in America and in outside of Israel means like the like Hasidic plus the Litvich, which is the they also are the ones that like wear the suits. Please let Shakespeare stream. Yes, I know. Yay, it's back. Okay, awesome, perfect. So, what I was saying was, oh, no, not that. What I was saying is, like, ultra-Orthodox, what that means in this context, right, is it's in a very American context, because the two big centers, I mean, like, on the East Coast, right, are New York and Montreal, or Montreal, right? Those are the two big Jewish communities on the East Coast, which is why, like, they both have their own, like, version of bagels and everything. So, I mean, like, you know, just to use, like, a very simple, you know, memorable item, right, from Jewish culture. And so, when they mean ultra-Orthodox, what they mean is, the ones that typically, you know, keep Shabbat, right, practice tznius, right, and keep all 613 commandments in the Torah, and also, you know, have that gender separation, etc., a very specific form of dress, and the hats are indicative also of what movement they are in. So, when they show so like, how should I put this? Like, when I was Hasidic, and I would go, like, let's say I was on a plane leaving from New York, right? And there's, you know, some Jewish people on the plane, and they were all frum, right? They were all religious. I could tell, like, oh, this one, you know, this dude over here, he's a Hungarian, like from this group. Oh, this is a Russian Jew, etc. You know what I mean? Like you can tell where they're. I think I've come to understand there. Oh yeah, there was no central authority in Judaism. It's only recently, because of the, you know, of the state of Israel, and also because of America likes to create like authoritative bodies, that that there's this idea that someone can say, oh, this is Jewish and this is not. Historically, I mean, Judaism is not a centralized religion. Like, anybody can pray anywhere, right? And it's you only build a shul once you have a community that needs to build a synagogue, right? Like that's not like some communities where the church comes first, right? Like in many Christian sects, right? Because they need the central authority comes first. In Judaism, it's always built upon the community, which is why there are so many movements that are based on specific places back in Europe or also in the Middle East, North Africa region, and also Ethiopia, etc., that are place-based, and so they keep a specific form when it comes to ultra-Orthodox Jews that's unique to that culture, right? And to that setting. So like that means that like sometimes they will disagree with each other and everything. Like if that's perfectly normal. Like disagreement and all of that stuff, argumentation, like that's totally cool. There's no like central authority. Now with Hasidic, particularly Hasidic, they call them dynasties for a reason, because they have a Rebbe who's like the chief rabbi, I guess, right? Is one way of thinking of them. And so they can be hereditary, although a lot of times they'll be hereditary like until they have a son. It's always a son, right? That isn't showing as much promise, right? Like they will go for the best Torah scholar, you know, like a nephew or whatever that's, you know, more observant, as opposed to, you know, because like the Rebbe of Chabad, which is like the biggest, like most well-known Jewish movement in Orthodox Jewish movement in the world, their Rebbe was the son-in-law of the previous one. So it's not necessarily like a dynasty in the traditional sense, but it's like, you know, like there's one person who kind of directs, you know, the ship to go one way or another. Yeah. But again, it's but then like what like I've said before, like if you say like if a woman, right, again thinking of this in binary Jewish Orthodox terms, when if you marry someone who's outside of your minchag, that means your tradition, they have to conform to the husband's tradition. So like even if you were raised Sephardi, like if you marry an Ashkenazi man, now you have to become Ashkenazi, right, essentially, and the kids have to be raised in an Ashkenazi way. And so for example, like my parents aren't from exactly the same type of same movements in Judaism, right? Like they're from two different communities, two different minchags, right? But that was never an issue because they were already, you know, kind of they were very similar, so there wasn't. But I do know of people that like if they marry into like a Hasidic, which is typically Ashkenazi, in a marriage to an Ashkenazi man, then you have to become like Ashkenazi and sort of take away those distinctions. And so, and then also another thing too is like, let's say you stopped being religious, right? This is technically also the case under Jewish law. Is that like, let's say you Miss Frizzle, that you stopped, let's say that you were Jewish, right? And that you stopped being observant, or you were never really raised observant, except for like, you know, like the life cycle stuff, you know, like in the beginning of your life, etc., right? And so later on you want to become religious, let's just say, right? Obviously that's not going to happen, but, you know, let's just say. Then if you become acquainted to a particular Orthodox community, again, this only applies to the Orthodox, then you would be compelled, I guess is a way to put it, to take on, yes, I do know you very well, yes. Then you would be compelled to take on that rabbi, or the leader of the whatever group you're part of, as if they were your spiritual father, because everything is based on like you have to follow your father's tradition, right? And like for me, it was interesting because like when I did do my father's tradition, which was the part that let me be, well, I mean, both of them had Hasidic elements in it. But like it was interesting because, I mean, I'm not gonna say where it was, right? Because I don't want to give specifics for reasons, right? Personal reasons. But like you could like when I met other people and I told them like, oh yeah, this is where like my dad's family's from. They're like, oh yeah, I totally know like where like that area and everything. Like it's all this type of Jewish people. And it's like yeah, that exactly. So like it's known, right? Like it's like a known thing.
Liv DeHoore fled Quebec for Ontario last November. It set off a firestorm of debate. The group says it left because of a conflict.
So I just want to reiterate. So Montreal is the center of Jewish life, or rather, is like the big metropolis of Jewish culture in Canada, right? Like there is now a bigger movement of people that have started to live in like in Toronto, but the vast majority of the Jewish like world, right, in Canada is still in Montreal. Oh, this makes a lot of sense. I was listening to an interview of an ex-Orthodox person who, when they divorced, was forced to continue following a lot of Orthodox procedures to ensure his kids were brought up for... Yeah, so, like, one thing about... Well, I'm not necessarily going to speak onto that exactly. But, like, Jewish divorce is very different. Like, one, it's always been a thing. Like, you've always been able to be divorced. It was a Greek idea that was inserted right in the whole Jesus narrative. Like it was, in fact, it was added on very late from what we know, because some people actually say that it should be removed because it actually comes from like a Gnostic reading as opposed to like an Orthodox Christian reading, right? Which would be interesting because then it would change the whole idea, but obviously, you know, it's too late for a lot of that. But anyway, one, Jewish divorce has always been possible. And it can be started by either person, by either party. But the husband, like, it recognizes that society is patriarchal, right? Like, I mean, obviously, Judaism is Orthodox Judaism is a patriarchal thing, right? And so when you get divorced, the wife has to be able to receive like money and, you know, like help, right? So that she can live on, you know, so that way she's not suffering, right? Like the whole point is you can't just like dump them and forget about them. Like that whole like kind of like child support, I guess is one way of thinking of it, is already built into Jewish marriage. Like you cannot leave your ex-wife destitute, right? And so a lot of that also has to do with the children as well. Like, if the mother still wants to raise them Orthodox or in that tradition, like Minchag, then, you know, you have to, like, the father would have to support that, right? Because the mother has to be protected. That has to be, like, that is written in the ketubot, like, in the actual marriage contract, it's written in there, like certain reasons why it could be, like why there could be a divorce, and also what would happen after if there ever was a divorce. But like the Orthodox divorce rate is like 1%, so it's within the margin of error. It's very low, but again, like there's also the expectation, and this is something that like kind of like I know people in like my own family that this has affected kind of like negatively because they didn't want to get married again. Is that like they expect you to get married like once your year of mourning is over, like you mourn for first when you're sitting Shiva, right? Then a month afterwards, then, you know, blah blah, until you have the yahrzeit, and then you can start, you know, doing regular things, right? But after that, then a lot of Orthodox women are kind of like, or I mean also Orthodox men. I mean, I'm not gonna say it's, but I feel like, you know, systemically, right, women are pressured into marriage much more than, say, men are, right? Like, if a man stays single, they will let him, or, you know, stay single afterwards. They will, you know, they're not going to take up as much of an issue. That's what I've noticed. Whereas with women, they'll be like, oh, you know, like, who's going to take care of her, right? Like, it's like always a, you know, like there always has to be that patriarchal kind of view. But yeah.
Over religious beliefs and education rights. But child protection workers allege something more sinister is at play. The children are being abused and neglected. The Controversy since then has only grown, and so we decided to travel to Lev Tahor's new community in Chatham, Kent, Ontario, where we were granted unprecedented access. For a week, we documented their culture and traditions. And tonight, in a full-hour special, we bring you this candid look at what Lev Tahor is all about.
So quick thing, the hat that the dude is wearing, the one that's made out of fur, that's typical of Polish Jews. Like a lot of Russian Jews don't wear them, but Polish Jews do, and this is for a historical reason. So when Kazimierz III, or the Great, allowed the Jewish people to, like essentially, you know, it's kind of what started the whole like Jewish people living in Poland in the first place. After a while, it was allowed for Jewish people to wear essentially the garb, I guess, the dress of Polish nobility as well. Like essentially, like if they were part of the civil service, they could wear the you know, that clothing as well. And so right, yeah, exactly. So that's the reason why a lot of this stuff, it's usually made out of silk. So that's why the caftans and all of that stuff, like that's literally a holdover from a more tolerant time, right? Like this was the time when they were allowed to wear this clothing for the first time, because everywhere else in Europe, they were not allowed to be like nobility, right? They were not allowed to be part of the civil service, and 3, they had sumptuary laws, right, about clothing. So that's why a lot of Polish, and it's not strictly Polish, but a lot of Polish Jews, or origin Jewish communities, have put on streimelach, as they're said in Yiddish. And so those are very expensive, the hats. And they're made with, like, I mean, it's, you know, it's made out of fur, right? Like it could be mink, it could be, you know, whatever. But it can be beaver, right? Like it doesn't have to be like but you don't wear them until you're married, when you get 2 of them, 2 streimelach. One that is like one that is only for Shabbat, and then another one that's for like you know, for like more regular use, because they are very expensive. So this is a very common wedding gift for the groom, right? So yeah. Yes. In fact, I actually know a hat maker back in New York who makes these. Like, you go to him and he measures your head, and like it fits. It's supposed to fit perfectly on your head. Like that's like it's so he makes it all him and his son. They're the ones that make it. And then when I was Hasidic, I mean, I still have, like, the hats I showed once on stream, those aren't the ones I would wear necessarily. But my actual, like, the one from back in the day, that one's also, like, handmade as well. To the point where, like, you know, like, they actually stitch in, you know, like their artisanal little stamp, right? Like, it's like a little, says, like, who made it and everything. And so, yeah, a lot of these things are artisan, right? Like, they're made, like, they're specifically tailored for the person. Same thing with the bride, right? Like, so one way of doing this is if they have sheidelach, right? Or, again, I guess I'm going to be speaking a lot of Yiddish today. Sheidelach or sheitel, right, means wig, right? That's what it means. So sheitelach are the wigs that a lot of Ashkenazi Orthodox women wear, because you're supposed to cover your hair, right? Like only your husband is supposed, you know, all that stuff, right? So if you're Sephardic, I don't know, it's a bit different now because, you know, of reasons of, like, you know, but typically Sephardim wear tichels, which are like they kind of almost look like almost like headdresses, and sometimes people have confused them with Muslims, because sometimes, you know, they kind of have a similar look, but the difference is that they usually wear it going back. It doesn't stay down, right? It goes all the way back. So, you know, that's a huge difference. This lady that I followed for pregnancy and parenting stuff covers her hair in this wig. OMG. Oh yeah, they are I mean, because they have to be kosher, right? Like, they have to be kosher. They can't be like, you know, like, and so again, this is something that she will receive, because like once you're married, then you have to wear a wig, right? Like, then you have to wear this. Thankfully, neither side of my family was part of a group that they made the women shave their heads, because to me, I'm sorry, that's just too far. Like you know, wearing a wig is one thing, right? Like, you know, as a whole, it's one story, but like shaving off the hair of a woman, whether or not she wants to, right? This is like by religious commandment, right? Is something that like I just can't subscribe to, like, at all. Like, oh, you know, if you want to wear a wig, okay, fine, right? But yeah, exactly. And to me, like, if you've ever seen the show Unorthodox with Shira Haas, who's like it shows her crying, literally crying while it's happening, because it's so painful. Like, it's like really painful, you know, and you have no choice, right? So
in the Jewish faith,
or rather the choice is made for you by other people, right? That's the problem.
The most important ritual of all is the Sabbath, a day of rest and spiritual enrichment when all else is set aside. In the ultra-Orthodox community known as Lev Tahor, it is the one time during the week a wife forgoes her long black chador and emerges in pure white. It is she who lights the candles and opens her eyes to begin the holiday.
So you can see how they're dressed very differently from the way how most Jewish people dress right away. And they even said chador. So a chador is what women in Iran after the Islamic Revolution have had to wear, right? To cover their entire bodies and to just leave the face exposed. So that is not a common Jewish thing. Like, covering your hair is one thing, but to say that you have to cover everything out in this way is something that most Jews, in fact, like, again, pretty much every other Jewish group in the world except for this one, this cult, does. And so as for this here, like, technically speaking, most people for Shabbat light 2 or 3 candles, you know, depending. But some people also have the also will light 1 candle beyond the main, because you need at least 2 to make for the woman of the home, right? To say the blessing over the, and then once she says that, Shabbat begins, right? And she has to cover her eyes, and, you know, and it's a very intimate time. Like, the belief is that when a mother, or, you know, when you're doing this, and you're saying this, right, you have, like, women are allowed to get, like, this close to God, right? Like God can hear you more than ever, because you are fulfilling the commandment that's, like, so important, right, to God, right? So there's a lot of, you know, even the songs that people sing over Shabbat, like, one of them is, like, literally calling Shabbat, like, a bride. Like, a bride, you know? Like, oh, she's a bride, and we're, you know, we have to, you know, etc. Yeah, like because you're fulfilling this commandment, and because it's so important, right? You know, keep the Sabbath day holy, for, you know, I am the Lord your God who led you out of Egypt, right? You know, all of that. This is a time, and because, again, mothers are supposed to do this, right? Like, it's very implicit that, like, a woman does this. Men can do this if there is no woman in that, like, any woman, and by woman I mean a girl or woman over the age of 12. From what I understand, anyway. I know some places, some other groups will put, like, at least generally in Jewish law, it's technically like that's when you're considered, you know, whatever. So then you could say that, but it doesn't, you know, typically people want like their eldest daughter to say it if the mother isn't there or someone else, right? But men can say it. It's just not typical, right? It's just not typical at all. So.
Until nightfall on Saturday, all concerns drift away. When the Sabbath ended on November 17th, 2013, there was no rest to be had. 35 families would travel on buses through the night from their home in Quebec to the quiet municipality of Chatham, Kent, in far southwestern Ontario. The plan was meticulously laid out. 3 buses, 6 cars, each person assigned a specific seat.
The mood was very excited, very excited.
After they passed the border of Quebec, everyone was cheering and started singing and just singing.
By mid-afternoon, the group of 200 ultra-Orthodox Jews had arrived in Chatham. A dozen bungalows behind the raised cornfields on the edge of town would be their new home. But what left...
I don't know why, but like the whole cornfields thing, like right away I don't know why it made me think Children of the Corn. I don't know. It's just anyway. That's just
what was
me.
leaving behind in Quebec was more than empty houses. They were moving away from disturbing allegations that they were abusing and neglecting their children and living under extreme control.
I mean, because technically, like all of their names are like from originally from Hebrew, like Malachi, right? Or you know, like Ezekiel, and you know, like all of their names are technically Yudith, you know, like their Hebrew names technically.
At the hands of their grand rabbi, a convicted felon, Shlomo Hellbrands. Child protection workers started investigating and were taking 2 families to court.
You know what? This is you know, on this rewatch that we're doing right here of this documentary, I never actually noticed the windows that they have that on there. I never noticed that they had it looks like a prison. Like I never noticed that. That's crazy. And I don't say that very lightly. Like I usually like if you can get me to say something like that, you know, that's pretty. Like it just, I mean, I know it's probably just like a trellis, but like when I look at it, I'm like, it looks like a prison, you know, like it's, like I don't know what else to compare it to. I don't know.
But on Monday morning, when they arrived for their final meeting, they found the community all but abandoned. Every family with children under 18 had fled.
Also, look at where they're sitting at, and look at the tables and the benches and stuff. Like it's all like cheap wood, or this is like plastic, like a little plastic thing, and like look at these desks. So I mean, I'm guessing that this is a cheder, so this is supposed to be their school. So it's all self-contained. Right? Like that's the whole point, is that's why it's so cultic, is that like they literally don't even leave this building or whatever it is, or this little you know, collection of buildings, and that's just really weird to me.
In court on Tuesday, a judge ruled the children in those 2 families, 14 in all, should be placed in immediate foster care. But by that point, they were gone.
It's not true. It's not true.
The leaders of this community deny the allegations of abuse and neglect. They say they left because of a conflict over education. Uriel Goldman.
Education. See, like this is why I knew that you would be interested in this, Miss Frizzle, because this is another group, right? I know it's typically Christians that are trying to do this, but like this is another example of like a group that tries to say, oh well, what about like our religious blah blah, you know, they try to use that as an excuse for their abusive practices, right? And they're essentially non-education or uneducating of the people that are there. So that's why I thought you would, you know, really find this interesting.
If you want to claim, if you don't study our curriculum, you're not a good father. No. We're going to apprehend your children.
Yep, something I always get so worried about is how to deal with suspicions of abuse, and then the parent can suddenly pull the kid out of school. Right, exactly. And it's funny because I actually know of people who had to suffer the opposite, where like they would threaten to kick or to send the kid to CPS as a way to like be abusive towards, as you say, minorities, right? There was a study done that like in like the LA Unified School District, like if you go to the divisions that are more BIPOC, that you see more of these calls that they like they want to call the student truant if they miss, if they get, whatever, if they're 30 minutes late once. Oh, well, they're obviously truants because blah blah blah, right? But like, like at Beverly Hills High School, that's technically outside, or Santa Monica High School, whatever, right? Or whichever one, or Westwood High School that's really white. Like, they would never do that after, one time, right? Like, it has to be a distinct pattern, right? It has to be of them not going, not showing up late. But like this is something that in the neighborhood that I grew up in at that time, like everybody, like all of their parents would get these like, oh, if your kid doesn't go to school, blah, blah, blah. And they did that so that way we wouldn't get to stay home if we were sick. Which, considering the whole pandemic that just, that's still going on, right? That's just, hanging out right now in America, constantly making new variants. I'm like, why would you want sick kids, Like that doesn't even make sense. But it was this like, oh, they are lying about being sick, right? Like, that was one of the implicit things that, like, the nurses always held against us. Like, oh, if you have a stomach ache, oh, it's not real. Like, oh, here, just drink some ginger ale or whatever, right? And then go back to class, right? Like, and then they'll say, I will call your parents. And they don't, right? I'm speaking from personal experience, obviously, but, yeah. Like, how do we even combat that policy-wise without abusing it toward... Right, exactly. Because, like, so when my mom was in America still, she's planning on coming back soon anyway, but, obviously, like, still, home base in Mexico City, but, essentially, when she would work with special needs students, like, one of the things that they would always try to do is try to, like, abuse the system against them, right? Like, because they wanted, like, essentially they would say, like, we don't even want them here. And that was a huge problem. But, of course, they never got in trouble for it. Like, oh, we're just thinking about the other kids in the class. Right, like they try to turn the tables and that. Again, I don't want to go too much in specifics, hence why I'm saying very general things. But like, it's it's so hard. So many parents are trying the hardest, and a lot of parents leave work before their kids get. Yeah, exactly. Like, literally, I used to have to be dropped off in front of one school to wait for the bus, and my mom had to go to work. And and then sometimes, like, it's very common even in the neighborhood, because again, I live in a very Mexican neighborhood, but even the one I grew up in here in LA, even there, like, people work 2-3 jobs, even back then when everything was better, quote unquote, right? To make ends meet, because, like, when that study came out that said, like, you need to make at least $80,000 a year to survive in LA in general, like the general, like, LA area, I'm like, I don't know anyone who makes that amount. Like, not even as a family collectively. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, So.
And because you need to learn about evolution, about homosexuality, about the curriculum that our professionals are preparing. Go back on to the...
You have no idea how many teachers just won't follow. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. It's illegal to not follow their, what do they also call it? Is it IEP? Is that what they call it in California? Individual, yeah, IEP, yeah. I know in California, like on the West Coast, they tend to just use that. But I have heard of BIP as well. Well, because of Texas, right? Because of Texas. And that is illegal, right? Exactly. Oh, it's an extension. Okay. if it gets to the point that the student is disrupting the environment. Oh, yeah. You know what? Now thinking of that, like, I know a student that essentially was just like expelled, and he's like a really sweet kid. Like, literally, like, if you met him, he's a really sweet kid, but because he's on the spectrum, right? And all of that stuff, right? That, you know, they've also, I mean, from what I remember, again, I'm not going to go into specifics, but like, just as you said right now, like, it's a long process. They had to go through many long processes, right? To get anything. And the public school system was like, oh, well, you know, we can't, you know, do this, blah, 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 so we're just going to expel him. And it's just like, how are you helping him? Like, how are you helping him? In that case, then, like, I thought you were, like, the whole point is you're supposed to be the school, right? Like, you know, like, instead it's just like, oh, you know, like, we have to think about everybody else, though. But it's like, okay, whatever.
Declare war against religion, it's a choice.
To understand Lev Tahor, one must first understand that religion is the underpinning of everything here. It dictates the way people dress, they eat, they work. Yes, people will admit life here is strict, but to them this is the purest form of Judaism, practiced to the letter of the Torah.
If I believe this is the truth, I have to complete everything but sweeten them. It's common sense.
And another thing too that I noticed he said was like, oh, we don't want them to teach homosexuality. And I'm like, now they would probably say like gender, you know, gender, whatever. Like, I feel like it went from that to now talking about like trans people and gender, because like I've seen places where they will like try to say both, but usually now they'll try to use like the new thing, right? Some of them though will piss me off. Like, they're not perfect. I'm not gonna stop a kid from stymieing just to make other kids uncomfortable. They just have a safe place to do it, right? Like, the thing was like again, they just did not want to provide any services, and so they're like, whoa, well then we'll just send the kid to this school that's for like, you know, like like, well, in California they're really common. I don't know what they're called though, where it's like for students that have been expelled and like for, you know, whatever reason, and they have to like go to that school. Like, I don't want to say, it's not remedial, like that's not what it's called. I just can't remember what it's called, where like they send him to that and they're like, well, he can just stay there. It's like, yeah, an alternative school, exactly. And they're like, yeah, just send him there. And those schools are not equipped to handle IEPs and things like that, like on that level, right? At least the one that I'm thinking about, right? I'm not gonna say which one, obviously. I follow alternative school in Cali. I love her. Oh, okay. I mean, like, again, like, she's so defeated. I mean, I'm defeated. You know, I mean, I know you've mentioned it in many senses that you feel defeated as well. Like, you know, like, I mean, I'm so exhausted when it comes to teaching that I'm just like, I wish that, you know, like, it's not even like, okay, if I did get paid for the work that I did commensurately, one thing, but also like, the amount of, I don't know, just like other labor that I have to do besides just being in the classroom, right? That they also don't count, you know, towards anything, so.
Posner is another community leader, and he, like most men here, wasn't allowed to make eye contact with me.
One of the obligations is...
Oh no. Oh my gosh, that's so horrible. I'm so hard. I think you did mention that before, or maybe you did. That's horrible. I mean, I'm sorry, like, I'm so exasperated when it comes to the public education system on both sides, right? To say K through 12 and higher education, because it's like it's just a race to the bottom. Like, it's just literally just a race to the bottom, and it's disturbing.
To go on exactly on the way that your parents was going. People say, listen, today it's different, it's very hard. We know it's very hard, but when we have a community, it's much easier. We're showing to our brothers, to the Jewish people, look, it's possible. And why should not do it the same way that we do it?
Teaching that religion begins almost immediately. Boys begin school at 3 years old, learning the Yiddish alphabet.
So, like, this is kind of what I mentioned before, where, like, at 3 years old, if you're, you know, AMAB, I guess is one way of putting it, or, you know, just a boy or whatever, anyway, if you're considered a male child, right, so to speak, they will, that's when you have your upscharan, that's when they cut your hair, and, like, your parents keep a little bit of it and everything, because from birth to age 3, you just let it grow. And then they usually leave the payas, right, which are the side locks, right? I know, like, I don't have side locks, I have a whole bunch of hair, but point being that, like, it would be separate, right? Like, everything else would be cut, but not this. And depending on, so, like, I knew people when I was a yeshiva who, like, because they were part of a different minchag, like, they would have straight, let us just say, like, they went straight down payas. But you see that some people, like here, they have them curled. Like, it can be either way. Like, some people, and again, it's to emphasize that they are completing this commandment, right? But there are also some Orthodox groups to where, like, as long as you're not literally shaving, right, like with the razor, right, like with the, you know, to where there's no hair at all, right, so to speak, that counts as having payas, right? Like, payas is this part of the head, not necessarily, like, the hair, right? Right now, people outside of education are worried that what we're teaching, like math, reading, science, it's like, y'all don't understand, these kids are in crises and need help. They can't learn, the world is on fire. I know. Like, it's like, just make sure that you put some, just like, try to diversify your curriculum or blah, 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 right? And it's like, I already do that. Like, I'm, making as much as I can, right? Like, I try to make students be able to explore outside of what is, typical. Because if I don't do that, like, the curriculum as they want to teach it, I mean, even with history, for example, is like they just want to teach, like, factoids. And it's like, that's not even how history works. Like, that's how, like, history YouTubers think history works. But that's not how historians know history works. Right? And so, like, that's the problem. It's like, they're like, oh, like, we just have to get them through, right? Like, just get them through. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter if they actually learn about the hermeneutical processes of history, right? And how histories are constructed, etc. And how, which voices are allowed to speak, etc. All these theoretical things, right? That I don't want, I won't necessarily go into, but and then, like, they've even taken away courses that are, like, introducing students to those different voices, right? Like, thinking about it from a feminist perspective, or thinking about it through gender, or thinking about it through class, or thinking about it through race, right? They're fine getting rid of those. Like, that's why, like, the whole, like, earlier in the 2000s, they were like, oh, gender studies. I'm like, because of the university being so neoliberalized these days, it had, I mean, there were, like, a few departments that were technically gender studies, but now, like, they don't really exist, because now it's just part of a philosophy, like, there's a gender studies person in the philosophy department, or in the history department, or in the, social, sociology department. It's not like, oh, it's a massive disservice. Like, honestly, you should have at least some education info. Yes, exactly. I mean, and instead, it's like, no, they just want to teach people, like, this very, like, it's interesting because, like, the textbooks that are, like, for the university or for the college, right? So they're like, which I hate when universities do that and colleges do that, where they make it so that, like, this book is only for this, like, I mean, and for some, like, they even make it to where it's for just this campus, right? If it's big enough, right? Which is ridiculous to me. But anyway, I mean, that whole thing is ridiculous. But anyway, but I mean, it's all about corporate deals to get money and, you know, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, so what ends up happening is that you have students that are never really taught history, but rather are just taught like an expanded narrative that they've already been taught before. And it's like they might get to learn like, oh, you know, we're going to talk about a little, you know, World War II, but focus on the Italian campaigns, right? It's like, that's not real history. Like, that's not the point of history, right? To be like, oh, we're just going to like switch one theater of war to the other. That's, no, what are, you know, what is war? What are the consequences of war? What is happening, you know? You know, anyway, yeah, and like you're saying, like with ethics and all of that stuff, like, I mean, they got rid of things, anything that really teaches them that or even makes them question such things, and that's why I feel like that's why I think there's such an abundance of debate bros, because instead they prefer to teach the whole like logical fallacies, right? I'll be right back. Just one quick second. I have to answer this call really quickly. Okay. Hope everybody didn't just leave. Anyway, so one thing I wanted to sort of explain, and like I actually pulled out my whiteboard because I think it's okay, awesome, great. I wanted to sort of explain this division here. So let's see here. So, right. Let's see, how do I get this so that it shows up? The whole board. There we go, sort of, yes. Okay, so you have Litvish, Yeshivish, right? These are the non-Hasidic or ultra-Orthodox. They can shave their beards, right? With not with a razor, but with like the Norleco trimmers and stuff like that. As long as it's the suck and cut, I mean that's the terminology they use. They're not big on Kabbalah, so they're not about the mystical tradition. They're not about that, and many of them outright reject the mystical tradition completely, and focus on Torah study, which I mean both of them do technically Hasidim, but it's different in that they focus specifically only mostly on Talmudic studies. So it's more about learning the laws, the arguments of the laws, etc. Blah blah blah. Right? Hasidim, right? And let me see if you can see it here. They grow their beards out, right? The whole point is that they take pride in showing, right? And it's also for Kabbalistic reasons, right? So they're big on Kabbalah. Like that's a huge central tenet of what that is. And I'll get that into that in a second. They also study something called Chassidut, right? It has the word Chassid in it, right? So it's works that are related or written by, right, Hasidic, big Hasidic rabbis, right, historically. So the Hasidic movement started in what is now Belarus, Eastern Poland, Ukraine, like Western Ukraine, parts like Western Russia, that general area. And it was started by a man called the Baal Shem Tov, right? And so the Baal Shem Tov was a man who completely flipped the script when it came to how people can express their piety. Because one thing about Charedim and Hasidim is that, like, Charedim means the pious ones, right? Hasidim, yeah. And so, hi, Ganja Fairy, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for making it to the stream. At that time, the center of Jewish life was in Vilna, in what is now Vilnius, in Lithuania. And so there they had the Saadia Gaon, or not Saadia Gaon, the Vilna Gaon, who Eliezer, who was one of those people that became a rabbi without actually he studied Torah so much that he just became a rabbi because it's like he just knew everything, right? So they're like, yeah, he's just a rabbi, like he doesn't need to go to yeshiva, right? But again, they were very wary of Kabbalah. They were very wary also. It's also a class distinction, right? So from the Litvich Yeshivish, right, they tended to be more of a class that would, for example, be part of the civil service or would participate, would participate in society in a different way. And they also, a lot of them tended to be much wealthier than Hasidim, like by a huge magnitude, because most Hasidim, and especially in the beginning, were peasants, right? In fact, they were technically a class below peasants because they weren't, Russians, or they weren't considered like equal to everybody else, right? And they could only live in a certain part of the Russian Empire, the Pale of Settlement. So this meant for Hasidism is that it started off as a movement against like this scholastic, legalistic, I guess is one way to put it, view, right, that essentially created a class division, right, where these men all, you know, they're the ones that got to say what was correct, what wasn't correct, and everyone else just had to follow what they said. But initially in the movement, it was much more geared towards how can Hasidism is that you can find, and this is where Hasid, the word Hasid, it means is that that the way how you found God, or the way how you experience God, was through joy, not through just constant study. And so this is where things that are considered like singing, right, dancing, even having sex, those are all things that are connect you with the divine, right? That things that are good, right, things that are pleasurable, things that are, well, maybe not, well, I guess pleasurable is one way to think of it, but things that make you happy, right, so to speak, or things that bring joy, right, are what connects you to Hashem, not whether or not you've memorized, you know, like all of the books of the, you know, of the Gemara, right? So it's a very different spirituality, and to this day, there's still, I mean, it's still a division, right? Like, the orgy religion. Well, technically, you can't have an orgy. You can only have sex with the person you're married to, but that's why, like, having sex on Shabbat is seen as like a positive thing, right? Like, it's seen as a good thing. Like, in fact, again, like I've said, it's so it's very different. It's like and there's actually a really beautiful story. And again, I don't know how many people are in chat. I'm sorry, I know I was gone for a little bit, but you know, for those of you that stayed, thank you so much. I just, you know, had to take that call. But rather, it's more like, again, like anything that like, it's not just suffering that brings you closer to God, right? Like, that's kind of something that, like, a lot of I don't want to say maybe not suffering, but like that even simple pleasures like food, right, like sex, like you know, all that stuff, could be is a way to connect with the divine. And there's a beautiful story that shows this in action, so to speak. And there are a lot of stories about the Baal Shem Tov, like when he was around, that some of them are like, you know, like a little bit, you know, who knows, like, you know, oh yeah, very different messaging in Protestantism. Exactly, yeah, it's just not, well, I mean, in Judaism in general, like the first commandment, the first actual commandment, if you know, according to Jewish thought, was be fruitful and multiply. Like, that's the first commandment, not, you know, I am the Lord, like, you know, like, it's not the 10 sayings, it's the first thing that Hashem tells Adam, right, or announces technically to the world, I guess, because I guess he's telling everything to do that, technically, as well, too. Anyway, so again, this was very different from the view in Lithuania, right? Lithuanian Jews, again, the center of their learning was in Vilnius. This is more, again, like in what was then called Little Russia. I mean, now we wouldn't, I mean, especially with the, you know, complex nature of the current war, right? I wouldn't necessarily want to call it Little Russia, but it's like that Belarus, which, I mean, it means White Russia. That's what it means, Belarus. Northwestern Ukraine, Eastern Poland, etc. That's where all these stories are. So here's the story before I forget to say it. Once the Baal Shem Tov was traveling from Lublin to Minsk, okay? So Lublin is now in Poland, and Minsk is the capital of Belarus. Well, now anyway, but back then it was just a big city, or to some village around that area, right? and that on his way there he had to stop because it was time for prayer, right? Because Jews pray 3 times a day if you're Orthodox, right? So he went to the shul, and he saw all of these men that were, you know, because only men technically have to pray anyway, you know, saying their prayers and everything, like they knew the prayers perfectly, etc. And then they started to do like the typical, like, you know, stuff that, you know, singing almost like. And then there was this young peasant boy that heard what was going on in the shul through an open window, and came over and saw and heard what was going on, and he wanted to join in too, right? Like he wanted to. So he had like his little like flute, I guess, and he played one single note, right, to sort of add into the music of what was going on. And the congregation, like the rest of the men who were standing up and praying, look at him and say, "What are you doing? What are you doing? You know, you're messing up our, you know." And the Baal Shem Tov, who was sitting in the back, said, up until, like, do not go against him, right? Up until he started playing, the gates to Hashem were closed. But it was through that single, pure note from the heart that opened the gates to Shemaim, and therefore to God's, you know, can actually listen to our prayers. And so you see that subversion of, like, oh, the people that know prayer best, right? That's not necessarily the only way to connect to God, right? The Baal Shem Tov is recognizing that even that single note, that one note played by that shepherd boy, right, that peasant boy, was worth more than all of the prayers of everybody inside. And that's one of the fundamental ideals of Hasidism. So you see how it's very different from the Litvich, where it's, instead they would say, what are you talking about? That's dumb. Obviously the people that know, you know, that's what's important, right? So that's why the Hasidim tend to be like getting drunk, right? You know, doing all of this other stuff, right? It's because the ethos, right? Like the very beginnings of it are in a response to, like essentially a class division. Like it's a very interesting historical materialist thing that you could actually analyze in that way. Is that, you know, because you had these class divisions between petit bourgeois, you know, Jewish culture and a peasant Jewish culture, that's kind of that was their reaction to the oncoming of capitalism, right? That's how that's been read. So anyway, back to the video.
At this age, there's still time carved out for play. But within 2 years, they'll start learning Genesis. By their teenage years, class begins at 7:30 in the morning.
Okay, did you see how they wear different hats, right? That's another thing too, like in ultra-Orthodox Judaism, I mean really it's just Orthodox, but like in the movement that I grew up in, right? And this is a very common thing in a lot of Hasidic movements. Is that like you wear like a kind of fedora once you and like a real fedora, not the trilby hats that most people think, you know, are fedoras. Hello, Ferret King, how are you? Thank you so much for making it to the stream today. So you can tell a lot about like who you're talking. Again, like I said, not only can you tell which movement they're part of, right, by their hats, like, oh, he's Satmar because he has this type of hat, or oh, he's, ooh, that sounds great. Ooh, what are you guys getting for dinner? No.
Continues until 9:30 at night.
Okay, what they just said, 7:30 to 9:30 at night, that is literally the schedule I had when I was in yeshiva. Ooh, sushi. Oh gosh, now I want some. But yeah, that was my schedule when I was at yeshiva every day. And if we had a tish, which is like a late night like I don't know, it's kind of weird because you like drink vodka or whiskey depending on which movement you're part of, and you like eat and you talk about Torah and people give Devar Torah and everything. Anyway, like all this stuff is going on, right? You still have to wake up at 7:30 the next morning. So like even if you go to sleep at 2, it's like 7 in the morning. You have to wake up, right? And you can't eat breakfast until after Shacharis, the first prayer. So like you have to wait quite a while to eat breakfast. So that's why I would just leave really early. Like I'm not gonna, no.
A day spent poring over scripture and memorizing the Jewish laws. In Quebec, such a curriculum wouldn't be allowed. In Ontario, private schools operate independent of the government, but still have to teach core subjects like English, math, and science. We wanted to ask the older students what they were learning.
This is the problem I have with this, because this is the same way in the U.S. The curriculum that these students are receiving, how do we, like, as educators, right, almost Rizal and I, how is it that we can be sure that those core subjects are being taught in a way that's actually conducive to them learning when there isn't a professional, right, like an actual educator teaching them that, right? Like, I'm telling you right now, rabbis can be very intelligent, right? Like, they know, you know, they know a lot of stuff, but if they don't know chemistry, and they're just reading it out of a book to you, they're literally just going to read it out of the book and just like expect you to memorize it. Like that's it, you know? Like the quality of the education, or even the education itself needs to be questioned. That's the problem with private schools and charter schools, is that they say, oh yeah, we have math classes, but is someone who is actually trained in mathematics teaching those classes, right? Is someone who's actually, you know, etc., etc. Because once you give this, it's not even an inch, it's like several miles, right? Of like, you can teach them anything you want as long as you teach these 3 subjects, right? Then those 3 subjects are going to be pigeonholed and narrowed down to just like very small things. Yeah, a lot of time private schools. Yeah, exactly. And that's the reason why private schools also pay less, right? Because again, they have people that aren't certified. They just have people that like, oh, I had experience, if even that, you know, like at some private schools, it's like they just hire, you know, from their own, like if it's like a religious community, for example, they would just hire some, you know, Father, you know, Jenkins, right? And they'll have him teach, you know, science, and he's never, you know, like the last time he heard of science, you know, science was like, you know, like when they discovered, you know, the like double helix structure of, you know.
As a woman, I wasn't allowed in a classroom with young, impressionable men. Instead, our male cameraman was allowed to take a list of questions and ask them on our behalf.
Hey guys, how are you?
And on the very first one,
what ages are you?
we were met with confusion.
13?
14.
14. Do you know who the Prime Minister of Canada is?
I knew I forget. He's not meeting with him every day.
Yeah, right. Do you know any of the provinces of Canada?
Stefan.
Oh, that's the Prime Minister? What will you do for work when you finish school? What do you want to be?
We were told boys are
These kids aren't being educated. I mean, they don't even, okay, how can you be raised your entire life in Canada or any country and literally not even know like where you're at? You know what I mean? Like, to me, that's impossible. Like, you know, like I know people that might not be good with directions, but they know where they live. You know what I mean? And then you can tell that they're not getting English education. I mean, because they're taught in Yiddish, right? So if the rabbis here, right, if they don't speak, some of them aren't even rabbis, but most of them are. If they don't speak very good English, I mean, what's going to happen with the students? I mean, he'll have them read and, you know, check off the list like, oh yeah, we did English for today. and that fulfills the requirement of the province or state. It's the we're in the world, not of the world. I mean, yeah, I can see how that's similar for sure.
Taught an hour of English every day.
Yeah.
But curiously, we couldn't find a single English textbook in the school.
Look at that. Look at that. Literally, we teach English for 1 hour a day. They couldn't find one book in English. Like this one's in Hebrew, Chumash Chumashi Torah. So this is like a book that contains like talking about the of the Torah itself. But it's a Chumash, so it has extra context. I mean, the books are beautiful, trust me, they're fine, but like if there's not even one book in English, then
Their teacher, Michael Goldman.
Does anybody here get a high school diploma?
What? Okay, it's been a while since I watched this. I don't like some of the stuff I've forgotten. I don't remember this part. Him being like, oh, like between the boys, I don't know if they ever get a degree. You're supposed to be the teacher, though. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like, oh yes, I teach them their entire lives, but I have no idea if they ever end up getting a degree. Well, great.
If someone here wanted to get a high school diploma, are they allowed?
Yeah, if somebody wants it, it's open.
How would they do that?
I can tell you about it. He will ask his parents to allow him to go to a school that he can do this diploma, if somebody really wants. So far, I don't think it happened. And
I wonder why he thinks it hasn't happened. I wonder why.
It's God that they accepting our education.
What education? I'm sorry. Like I don't want to be, you know. But like I know other people, like when they, particularly if they came out of an evangelical background, like a Christian background, right? They will, you know, they would be, you know, ran up the wall with hearing some of this stuff that's being said here. And like for me, as someone who like at one point was being told like, oh, if you want to be like really be part of our community, you should give up your secular education. In essence, when I did my PhD, my master's, but like, yeah, don't do that. Just be like, just do whatever you need to do here. Like go work in a warehouse or something, which is, you know, fine. Like that work is fine. But the whole point was that don't get educated in the secular world. That was a big no-no for me.
Okay, you can close your math books for now.
For girls in Level 4, school is structured differently.
Take out your spelling spirals.
They are allowed more secular subjects, with more hours of math and English.
And now speak means to talk. In Yiddish, what will be the word? Reden.
These students are 10.
Yeah. Ich reden Yiddish means I speak Yiddish, right? Yeah, it's just irresponsible, right? Exactly. And in German, reden means to counsel. At least that's what it means now in German, in modern German. But like to me, like that's why I was like at the time, again, it's hard to talk about because it's also like a lot of stuff was happening, right, in my life. And then I have these people that are like, you know, like, okay, let's railroad you into this life, right? And I'm just like, no. It's just not gonna happen. It wasn't this extreme, right? Like they said, oh yeah, you know, you can have secular friends, blah, 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 you know. But, you know, there's always this like, but the minimum requirement is XYZ, or, you know, so it's like.
And 11 years old and eager to learn.
So what does this say?
Speak.
Can you read the whole sentence for me?
I will speak only Yiddish.
If you could tell people in Canada about your experience living in this community, what would you want to tell people?
I have a good rabbi.
You have a good rabbi.
He's learning me to go visit the richtige weg.
The right way.
And the right way.
The rabbi teaches you to go the right way.
Yes, my God is very happy.
Your God is very happy.
Classes have been put on hold for the past 7 months since child protection workers started visiting many families in the community. Their teacher, Malka Rosner, said
they have such pretty handwriting. Like I don't know if it was multiple, but if it was multiple, or maybe it was just one of them. Like really, really pretty handwriting. And I'm glad. I mean, one thing I will say is I am glad that someone is getting a better education. You know, but that's another thing too. Is like this is also a thing in Israel, for example. I mean, it exists in America, but it's more talked about as a phenomenon in Israel. That like in a lot of these like Hasidic groups, I'm not saying like them, but like in general, is that men will be kind of like, oh, you should just study Torah all day, right? And so then you then your wife has to go work, right? And you don't, like, she has to support you, right? And you get a small stipend from the yeshiva, or rather the koilo, but it's like a very different thing. It's like you're just like every day you just go study Torah all day, and then you come back and your wife has been working, you know. And so that's been a thing that like people have commented on, because it's a weird, interesting reversal of like the Christian way of doing things, right? But again, it's because like some people have argued that the issue is that the rabbis know who is going to be a good Torah scholar and who isn't, but instead they let as many people all be in the koilom or all be in the yeshiva. So then that way, well, I mean, especially like in Israel, like, because then they can't serve in the IDF, right? Is like, that's one thing. But also another thing too is like, they would rather people be on like food stamps, etc., instead of, you know, having a job in the secular world. So, and in my case, like, they're like, we don't even want you to get a higher education in general. So, you know, there's that.
As they've only recently resumed.
We try to learn practical things.
So things that apply to your life is what you're studying.
A class of sewing, a class of cooking, what is important for your body, what vitamins. We learn practical things.
None of the teachers we met were accredited. Some only have the schooling they received here to pass on.
So you...
What? Okay. This is beyond irresponsible. This is... I mean, I can see why they had a criminal case against them. Well, against, like, the leaders, not, like, against everybody, but, like, only what you learned there is what all you can impart onto your own children. That's, like, you know, that's... I don't even know, that's...
You're how old now?
13. Now she's 13. She has a class from 13 to 15.
So in about 3 years, you will become a teacher.
In 3 years, you will become a teacher.
Yes. Will you like that, being a teacher?
Yes, sure.
To be fair, Lev Tahor isn't the only religious group that has clashed with Quebec's education laws. Still, its teachings are some of the most restrictive.
Why are you opposed to teaching things like geography and Canadian history?
I don't say it, I don't have to learn that. A lot of the religious studies is how you have to behave. And it's much more important. If I'm going to have extra time, I'm more than happy to learn all the other stuff.
But Uriel, with respect...
Yes.
We asked a group of 15, 16-year-old boys who the Prime Minister of Canada was, and nobody could give us his full name.
Okay, this might be something, nothing...
Hello there, Genesis. How are you? Thank you so much for making it to the stream today. Hope you're doing well. Like, to me, and I don't know, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Like, just gonna vibe and watch? Perfect. Miss Frizzle, like, look, like what he just said, like, Uriel, right, the rabbi here, like, I feel like this is also another thing that, like, people that, like, homeschool in particular do, where they're like, oh, well, you know, like, because I want my kids to be raised in this particular way, right? Like I will teach that stuff, but it's always like as almost like a residual thing, right? And then it's this like weird yeah, exactly. Because again, like none of them have. I mean, again, it's not necessarily saying that. Oh, if Uriel Goldman, if he had a you know, a bachelor's degree in education, that would solve the problem. No, it's that how it's being applied is the problem, right? Like that, like, oh, well, you know, religious studies are much more important. Okay, well, you have a school day that's from 7:30 to 9:30, right? Again, and when I was in yeshiva, that was my schedule as well. And so again, speaking from experience, it's like they could make time for this, right? But they specifically don't. They will just use the excuse of, well, religious education, right? Or whatever, blah, 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 right? Because like the late night classes, I always felt were irrelevant because they literally were like a recapitulation of the morning, of the early morning ones. I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, we went over this like 12 hours ago, you know, like, it's like, I think we're good. I think we're good on this concept. Like, we get it. Like, we get it.
Personal, but maybe it's talk about politics. No.
But this is the Prime Minister of the country.
Okay, that's maybe a thing that you have to know, but we're not doing it because we doesn't want the children to know this fact. Absolutely not.
According to the people of Lev Tahor, teaching their kids their way was grounds enough to leave their home in Quebec. On this, they could not compromise. But as we discovered in our week-long visit, the classroom is just the start to this extreme way of life.
Like, look, I'm not gonna say that it's not like extreme, right? But I also have a huge problem. I can't imagine thinking you should be able to hold kids' attention for 14 hours. Well, right, and so like the way one is like the time when you're most when I was in yeshiva, okay. From my own experience, we had different different teachers, right? I mean, rabbi means teacher, so that's why, you know, as many people know. But so it was broken up into different, like, in the morning you study Hasidus, right? And then you study, and then you have Gemara for you know, Gemara for people that are doing like a more advanced study of Gemara, or people that are doing Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which is like the abridged, I guess is one way of thinking of it, like the Jewish law, right? Then you have, you know, like there's stuff that's going on, right, broken up, but you're just in this one space constantly with a shared, like, the same people, right? And some, you know, and you live there too. That's the other thing. Is at yeshiva, I lived at the yeshiva, right? So like my roommates, right? Because I had 3 of them, you know, were there too. And like all of the cycle of things, like the 3 daily prayers, right? It's like, it seems like no rest. Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why I would leave early. Well, for other reasons too, because like I don't know, like I always wanted to take like the showers were not conducive to, I don't know, someone who does not want to be seen showering. I'll just put it like that. Not very good on privacy, especially when you're like you know, having many things happening. And so, like, I would leave early so that way I could take a shower and then just go to sleep. I'll be like, I don't care about the late night classes because, like, I'm not going to be up until, like, 10. Then go to sleep and then wake up at 7, right? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I remember, too, because I remember that I used to, I was afraid of people, like, taking my clothes, right? Because, you know, dudes are assholes, right? And so I remember I had to like hide it above this like thing, and it was so dusty. It was like this like space just past, like there was like a huge window, but there was like this flat surface, right, that had like never been dusted and like ever since the yeshiva opened, and like I had to hide my clothes up there, so then that way, you know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, like all these memories coming back are just like, oh. But yeah, like that was my life, like literally every single, and I also was like, yeah, it even got to the point where like I couldn't like some people well, anyway, no, that's good enough for now.
Next, a woman's place inside a Lev Tahor home.
It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that women have to wear black.
And woman has to be modest.
Like, there are so... Hi, Clarity Echoes. Welcome to the stream. Yes, I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well, too. Thank you so much for stopping by. So yeah, I was just like, no, I am not gonna... Awesome, that's so good to hear. Like, seeing some of this stuff, like right now what we just saw, like, the menorah, it's, like, bringing back memories, and... You know, like, my yeshiva memories, right? Oh, gosh. And it wasn't this extreme, though. I will say that. It wasn't like this, but... Like, there's definitely... like a commonality between my experience and like this experience, right? Oh yeah, it's just, you know, it's like I remember rapping to fill in. I remember like Shabbat and all of that stuff, and you know.
Before all else in Lev Tahor, the day begins with prayer.
I've had to take up because the shiny happy people. Oh yeah.
A blend of voices, young and old, can be heard from outside, surging from a near whisper to a fervent chant. This is also the time men don the tefillin, binding scripture to the head and the heart.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much,
In most ultra-Orthodox
Bobby.
communities, this morning worship lasts about 45 minutes. In Lev Tahor, it goes on for 2 hours.
Yes, so what they just said is correct. Typically the morning prayer is about 45 minutes. It's short. Well, it's not short. Well, it's really more like an hour if I think about it. Yeah, it's like, you know, and there's like all this stuff you have to do. Like, it's not like this is only showing one part of when this is going on. Like they don't they're not showing the, like when they have the chazan and and you have to say this and you know, etc. Which is fine. But like on Shabbat, like the prayer lasts like 3 hours, you know, like it's a long time, right? Like people go to church and they go for an hour, right? Like when I was at yeshiva, like Shabbat, like the service was a long time, right? So yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. Like this tracks, like this is like, yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, I mean, but again, where I went was not like this, in that they did not extend the prayers past where the original prayers end, right, so to speak.
Once the day is underway, there is much business to be done. But how this community makes money is less than conventional. Joseph Peavy, for example, is a kindergarten teacher.
As a teacher, you were paid?
No, no.
And so how do you get money to live?
Food, we send me food.
As we discovered, the person who most...
What? Oh, that's the... Oh my gosh, they're volunteers. Oh, no. See, I haven't watched this in a while. Like, I did not... I've forgotten a lot of what was in here. But, oh my gosh, he's just a volunteer. Like, he's just like a parent. That they just are like, oh, hey, you know the alphabet, right? And just like, okay, go teach the alphabet to the kid. And we'll give you food. I don't know. I feel like there's like a lot of problems with that. I don't know. I don't know what you think, Alt Miss Rizzle, but I feel there's like some problems with that. with letting a parent like volunteer be the person that's teaching everybody's kids. Yeah.
Often pays for food and rent is one of the community leaders, like Mayor Rosner.
I'm one of them. Yes.
And the money for rent and food comes largely from donations, written out to Lev Tahor's registered charity.
Who are these people who are making the donations?
It's not, I cannot say, it's not people that would like to mention their names.
Are they in Canada?
Some in Canada, some in the United States, some in London, and some in Israel.
Those donations aren't small. Lev Tahor's first charity, Congregation Rimanov, was worth over $5 million before it lost its charitable status.
What? $5 million? Okay. So you see... Right? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. Okay, that's just like, this is definitely something else, right? Oh, Miss Rizzle, like, this is definitely, like, really going into your, I mean, like, going into multiple territories that you discuss, right? Because there's no way, I mean, look at that place and tell me that it's worth $5.6 million. There's no way. Hi, Buffy, how are you? Thank you so much for coming to get cozy with us here. But like, and that was back then. Like, and they're like, oh, we just get it through donations. Like, I don't know. That seems very suspicious. Like, beyond suspicious to me. Yeah. Like, I'm like, okay, they have $5.6 million, but like they have those like literally like chipboard benches, and like they have like plastic chairs for the kids, and the beds, like, they were like really thin too, and they're all bunk beds. Like, well, then who's getting all that money? I mean, where's all that? I know, better educational facilities, actual teachers, right? Like there are Orthodox people that do become you know, actual teachers, right? Like, that is a thing. I mean, even people growing up sometimes have had like I had a Jewish teacher growing up, right? Like in high school or whatever, right? Like that's normal. But they're specifically not doing that, right? Instead, they're like, oh yeah, we want you to volunteer and we'll give you food, but they don't give them money. That's making them hyper dependent on, that means that they can't leave. Like, that's making them so dependent on the leader. I mean, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not even like, oh, your own money so you can go out to buy food on your own. No, it's like, we will give you the food. Right. This is just, this is getting, whoa.
Its current charity, the Society of Spiritual Development, has also seen millions flow through its accounts. Despite that, Lev Tahor has left behind in Quebec thousands of dollars worth of bounced checks, unpaid taxes, and unsettled bills.
Oh gosh.
While we were told a few...
See, that makes no sense, right? Like the extreme poverty that they are forcing the children to live in. And they haven't even gone to, like, the violations yet, right? Like they're talking about, like, the lack of education, which is true, right? Like, they cannot say... This is similar to the Kingston clan in the FLDS. They aren't allowed to collect their own wages. Everything goes to accounts controlled by the clan, and they get rations. Yeah, literally. If a school that just got a $5 million grant, like, the things that a school could do, right? Like, again, if they weren't, forced to, like, oh, you have to do this or blah blah blah, but if schools could actually just get the money they need to fund the programs that they actually need, right, and actually want, like, schools would be completely different. Let alone this place where it's like, I don't even know, it's like even the office was like, everything was, looked secondhand or really inexpensive, etc. So, like, where's the money going? Like,
do work outside the community. we didn't expect to find anyone like Avraham Dinkel.
Do you have any prices on the rice for North Africa?
Avraham is a commodities trader from Toronto and the newest member of Lev Tahor.
Because of her close connections in Vietnam, I was thinking that maybe she can just get a spot price.
As a principal, access to the internet, TV, and the radio is forbidden. But when it serves...
Okay, so this part here, the access to the... When I was in yeshiva, right, it technically wasn't completely verboten. It wasn't completely banned. You could use the internet. It doesn't need to be expensive. It just needs to... Exactly! Like, I mean, like, those beds, and I mean, again, this goes back to, like, how, like, when I saw, like, the trellises outside of the windows, like, it feels like a prison. You know, like that weird little classroom with, like, all of the, like, higgledy-piggledy chairs, right? They're, like, one of them is, like one of the, like, plastic lawn chairs that you see, like, you know, at, like, Dollar Tree or whatever, and the other one is, you know, this, and it's like, you know, it's like not like you would think that even like their own, that they would invest in their own community, but they don't. Instead, they want them to live on like starvation rations, and I mean, to be hyperbolic, I guess, but also not. I mean, like, you know what I mean, like I don't know. Like, it just seems to me very strange. And now that they have this commodity trader, I don't even know what's gonna happen. But which that's a strange thing to, I guess, have someone who works moving money around, right? Like, that's also suspicious. But in and of itself, it's not, right? Like, okay, yeah, maybe a commodities trader would want to become religious, right? That's fine. Or he already was religious, but feels this community is the community that best suits his beliefs, etc. But it is weird that, like, their community doesn't have access to this, and yet and it's incumbent upon all of them to not have it, except for him, right? Like that's essentially what they're saying. Because, like, when I was in yeshiva, you could use the internet, technically speaking. However, you could only use it in one room, the zal, the study room. So you would have to bring your, like, whatever you had that had internet, like your laptop, because there were some people that were doing, like, you know, like certificate programs online or GED programs online, whatever it might be. I mean, it could also have been like college programs too, but everything had to be online, right? Because they, you know, they had to be in yeshiva. So that was allowed, and there are things like kosher cell phones that, like, you can go to, like, Jewish news sites, right? And I do not, by that I do not mean Israeli. I mean, like, only Jewish, religious Jewish news. And, like, very specific other websites, but you can't go to, like you can't search anything on Google, you can't blah blah blah. There's no radio. I remember that. And there were no TVs, right? Like, think, like, again, when I was in yeshiva, right, there's all these young dudes, right? Like, there's, like, you know, some of them that are in their 20s, some of them are slightly younger, you know, whatever. But no TV, no video games, right? No real internet, right? Like, you cannot use the internet outside of that room. Like, you're, like, once you're in the dorms, which are on the other side of the building, there's no Wi-Fi signal. Right, and even the phones you can have are limited, right? So it's like, yeah, it's a, but yeah, no, like, living, and that's kind of why, for one example, like, I still haven't gotten used to the idea of owning a television. One thing I think is just like, well, one, because I have a computer, right? So there's that, but like, some people, you know, have a TV, right, like, in their bedroom or whatever, and I just, like, don't, because I just never had one, you know, like, like to me, it's like the idea of houses not having TVs is, like, completely normal, right? Well, you know, at least now, right, because now also having TVs is also normal as well, but I'm just, like, trying to think, like, no radio, no internet, really, again, like, we could go to limited things. I mean, everything was just, you know, anyway.
The community, be it for legal matters, monitoring media reports, or generating revenue. Some people are granted special permission.
How is business for you living in this community?
It's great. It's great. It's great because I'm able to balance religion and business in a very, very healthy manner.
And the money you bring in, does that money go to helping the entire community, or do you keep that just for your family?
Well, it goes to my bank account because it's mine.
So, note that he is responding to her questions, but he's not looking at her. This is a huge thing. This is actually why I think a lot of people who are ADHD that are Jewish, happen to be Orthodox, that again observe these rules of tznius, don't ever, or even like also on might be on the spectrum, etc., never get diagnosed because, like I know that one of the things that, like in schools when they try to like notice it, right, with ADHD, ADD, is like not being able to like look people in the eye, right? Again, this is just like a thing that's happened historically, or at least in the past, maybe not historic, you know. And now I don't know, Mr. So maybe you can speak more to that when it comes to K-12, because like at university level we don't, like, we're not supposed to ever ask questions, you know, we don't do that. Like that's their business, right, so to speak. But like one of those things where like when they're young and they like notice and they say, oh, maybe you should take them to a psychiatrist or whatever. There's a lot of stuff that's like, well, because you're not supposed to look at women, like you can't, like this is why Ben Shapiro, like when Dat Katie came in here and said, he's not an Orthodox Jew, and I agreed with her. He's not an Orthodox Jew because Orthodox Jews are not supposed to do everything he does. Like everything he does proves that he's not an Orthodox Jew. And so he claims orthodoxy, right? Because he uses it as a cudgel against people who, again, who don't realize that like everything he does is, you could put him in cherem for that, right? Like for example, like when he talked about the Sports Illustrated thing and he said, oh, you know, but I would like send back the swimsuit edition, whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. They still have women in all of them. And you can't look at that. Right? Another thing too was this other aversion, maybe not aversion, but it's like this like not really big on exercise, right? Like that's not a big thing that happens in the Orthodox Jewish world. Like there are no gyms, right? Like going to the gym, especially since it requires you to reduce the amount of clothing you're wearing, is not seen as a good thing, right? Especially because then they would have to have, oh, no worries, Miss Frizzle. I was just saying that, like, I feel that because, and I don't know what this is in K through 12, because in, like, at the college level, we can't, you know, do such things, right? It's essentially that, like, a lot of teachers will sometimes, like, notice that, like, a student doesn't keep eye contact or is always, you know, which are said to be symptoms or at least signs of ADHD or ADD or, you know, being on the spectrum, etc. But like in the Jewish world, in the Orthodox Jewish world, like Jewish men, right, Jewish dudes, like once they're 13 particularly, are never supposed to look at women, right, like directly. So like right now that he's talking to her and he's compelled to look away, right, it raises, it made me think of like, I wonder how many people are not diagnosed. But then I'm thinking, like, you know, is that actually is that something that actually is still relevant? Because I know that was in the past, that those were seen as signs of ADD, ADHD, right? But I don't know what it is in K through 12 education, or if that's still the case, where like a teacher might, oh, perhaps, you know, like tell the school counselor to tell the parent, right? But like that's why no one looks at her in the eye, and why she couldn't talk to the young guys, to the young boys that were there. She cannot talk to them because she has her hair being shown, right? And she's, you know, and she's married, right? But like anyway, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Money, but I would definitely give back to the community and help them out.
Oh my gosh, imagine all of that. I have heard that, but someone who can't keep eye contact, I don't ever use that. Yeah, I mean, like, I know that that's like one of the, I mean, I've heard that like that's stuff that like, oh, my teacher told the school counselor that because I'm always like, you know, losing focus or what, you know, like looking around, I don't look at them when they ask me a question, that they're like, oh, you must have ADD, you know, like, that's why I'm like, was questioning it as I was saying it, like, I don't even know if that's really a thing, because again, like, also culturally, like in Mexico, you're not supposed to look at people that are of a higher status than you are. Like, you're not supposed to look your parents in the eye, at least traditionally, right? Like now, like especially in like Mexican culture in the U.S., it's totally different, because in the U.S. you have to look them in the eye, right? That's seen as respectful. But another thing too, like in Mexico, you're not supposed to point at someone with your finger, like ever. Like you're always supposed to gesture at them. You're never supposed to point. Like pointing is very disrespectful.
Another source of revenue in this community,
and that is something that I know still happens, because even my family still does that.
Is the government. A family with 10 kids, which isn't uncommon, receives upwards of $35,000 a year in child tax benefits.
Hi, sir.
But raising those...
Like I can't imagine, like having so many children and being given rations, right? Like, that's essentially what's happening in for this movement, right? They're getting rations. And they're still expected to have more children, right? Like with those 6, right? If we were to add in both sums, right, from their old charity and their new charity, that's almost $10 million. If they had $10 million, they should not be eating, right? Like even basically, right? Like, why are they eating? You know, in like look at the kitchen, look at this, right? Like, these are substandard conditions, right? At least in the sense that it makes no sense considering the amount of money that that they have in their, as it were, treasury, right?
Families falls to the women, and as we quickly learned, Liba Goldman, Malka Rosner, and Sarah Helbrands are very busy.
How many children do you have?
8.
9. 18.
The families here are made up of Canadians, Americans, and Israelis, and they start early. Some of the American girls were married in the US, where it's legal at 15. In Canada...
Oh god, that's bad. At 15. At 15 years old. That's bad. Like, I don't care if it's legal, that's wrong. I don't care what anybody says. Like, there is no way in hell that that's okay. Like, that's a child. You know? Like, people say, oh, well, you know, it's the law, right? Well, I don't care about no goddamn law. That's a child. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that is... Imagine... that, I mean, what would you even call that? Like, child marriage tourism? Like, oh god. That's horrific. 15. I'm sorry, that's just like, whoa. Like, that's not like when the Hasidic movement I was part of was like, oh, when you turn 18, right? Like when you're 18 and like once you know, stuff like that, right? Like most people get married like in like around the age of 20. It's not like the youngest as possible. It's always like once the dude has like a job, right, or has finished yeshiva or whatever, right? Which technically yeshiva ends when you get married, but like some yeshivas give out degrees. But oh god, that's so disgusting. Imagine like, oh yeah, we're gonna send you to the state because we want you to get married. Oh god, I'm sorry. I don't mean us to be stunlocked. That's just like disturbing.
A girl must be at least 16 for it to be legal.
How old were you when you got married?
16 and a half.
I was 19. I was married before I came to the community. Yeah, I was a little over 16.
One of the allegations against Lev Tahor is that girls in Canada are married under 16.
I do. Yeah, it's hard not to be still. I know. It's especially because, again, like, I'm Jewish, right? And, like, I lived in a Hasidic community, and even though it wasn't like this, like, yeah, like, there were, you know, like they even praised, you know, like, rather, this wasn't my Hasidic community, but another one that I know very well, like, they were, like, they got really angry when New York, or was it New Jersey? I'm thinking it might have been New Jersey, when they started to make it where, like, if you do not teach the curriculum with a certified teacher, right, then you're not going to get the funding that you would otherwise get, right? Which I think, to me, if it's a private school, like, if the free market works so well for private enterprise, why do they always need government money? Why do they need seed grants? I thought capitalists were supposed to be the ones, as it were, seeding everything, quote unquote. But that's just disturbing to me. I mean, you know, and like with this, like, oh, they're all donations, so we can just, you know, they can't be taxed. Imagine the things that they are putting there as tax write-offs. I mean, because they already said about the children, $35,000. Hello, Moni. How are you? If private education is the way, why can't they? Exactly. Hello. Thank you so much for joining the stream today. Because, like, at least, like, again, not to hype up the one I lived under, you technically could have a job. Like, you could have a job, you know, in a profession. But they were very concerned about the nature of my profession, right? Like, oh, well, you're studying history writ large, right? You're not focusing on just, like, our movement's history, this, you know what I mean? And that was their problem. Like, oh, like, you're going to be exposed to, you know, other people's history. And that was what, like, putting it that way just reminds me of just how bad it was. Like, why I was just like, what? Like, it's just the dumbest stuff I've ever heard. But anyway, because they get $35,000 for the I mean, they all have huge families, right? I mean, like, I used to know, like, I mean, I technically know of them still. I just haven't spoken to them in a while. Of a family that had 23 kids, or 22, or 20. Yeah, I think it's 22 or 23. Now I'm misremembering. I think it's 22. 22 kids. Think about that. Like, ever since they got married, they've been having children almost every year that they have been married. And of course, there are some twins in the mix, right? But still, 23 kids. Like, you know, that's a lot of children, you know? And I remember, like, someone said this jokingly, that once there was this girl that she came from a family of like 18 kids. And she said, oh, when I have my own family, I want it to be small. And they asked her, what does small mean? And she's like, I only want 10 children. I'm like, that's a lot of kids. 10 kids is a lot of fucking kids. Like, I'm sorry, you know, like, people that want lots of kids, people that have lots of, that's wonderful, that's great. But just, like, asking this young girl that question. And, again, because it is a relative thing, right? Big or small. How do we deal with housing rooms? We have stories of the council having 2 knock homes into one. Well, usually what ends up happening, I mean, there's another video I could show that's one that shows this in Israel, but the problem is it's subtitled, and I feel like it's preferable to show things that are already in English. Just for the audience's sake, also since people are listening in. But typically what ends up happening is they will, they just gender separate. That's what they do. It's like, oh, well, all the boys can just stay in this room, and they just need a space to, like, lie down, right? That's all they need. So, like, they don't need anything else besides that, right? Like, it's not like us, and in fact, this is actually true in New York. I remember that it's cheaper to pay the fine if you get discovered of like creating apartments within your own home, right? Because this is a thing that's also done in many BIPOC communities as well, right? It's like done in the Mexico where they put up drywall and, you know, to rent out, you know, because it's, I mean, LA is really expensive, right? LA is really expensive, and New York is also really expensive. So like people will make like small apartments out of, you know, their home, and so like they will have that where they have a whole family in one apartment made up of a one family home technically. And then until they, you know, have to move on to another home. And it's very common to live, and also Jewish families are very commonly multi-generational. Like my family for a long time was multi-generational. Like it had as many people as possible in one, but you know, they only had one house technically. So like other non-bedrooms, right, so to speak, will become bedrooms, but there's gender separation. And as you saw here, the things they use to separate are like literal tarps, like the plastic tarps that you can get at like AutoZone, right, or whatever, O'Reilly's, or I mean technically at the 99-cents only store, but the big ones, right, like the blue tarps, right? That's what they use as like a curtain, and then they're like, okay, this is now a bedroom. Right, and again, like I remember there was one room of a family that they had a lot of sons. I mean, they had a lot of daughters too, but they had a lot of sons. Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's pretty normal to live in a same house with your grandparents. Exactly. Like, and also like in Mexican culture too, it's common for people to live with your parents and like multi-generational, which is why like when I've dated people that are white, for example, they always thought it was weird, like, oh, you still live at home, right? But it's like, well, where else am I gonna live? You know, like, because again, I was raised in two cultures, right, that together put emphasis on you don't kick out the kid at 18 and just make them, you know, suffer, right, to find their way in the world, right? And in fact, my father put it that way. Like that's how he thinks about it. Like that's what people who do that are doing. They're making their children unnecessarily suffer for no good reason, right? And that's his thought about it. Like, you know, that it would be better to live in the familial home until you get married. Again, from the Jewish perspective, because that's so that way then you can, I guess, accumulate, right, enough, say, like experience at work to get a good enough job to afford your own space, right? Not have to immediately be placed in these horrible situations where, you know, you like, I mean, like, again, like I've lived in a room that was part of someone else's apartment, right? Like, and they didn't know, like the apartment complex didn't know that this was going on, right? But I just had a room that couldn't even be locked. So anyway, I mean, I don't want to go to, yeah, this is something I have very little knowledge or exposure to in my area, but we have a few large single generation families where a house has to, yeah, like my aunt's house, they were able to, because of something, I think it was because like the previous owner, something so that like they had like the house insurance was able to pay for it, but they didn't get like a higher payment or whatever for their house insurance. I forget what it was. It was like some weird, but they were able to make a second story for them. But it's like, but it's a tiny house. Like if you like in LA, right? Like the houses that they built in certain areas, right? Like in the 50s and 60s, which is where like a lot of houses here were built in that area, in that era of time. They're tiny, right? Like you have a little front yard, a little backyard, and then like a little deep, like a little detached garage, but you have your little tiny house, right? And it has like one bathroom, one kitchen, you know, 2 bedrooms, and that's for your whole family, right? And it's just like, but yeah, someone in my town has 14 kids. Yeah, I mean, again, like, my family's not that big. Like, it's not, like, for, if you go back a couple of generations, you do see the big families. But that was back then, right? Like, I'm talking about, like, great-great-grandparents, right? Like, when that was more normal in general, right? Like, as soon as my family was able to become, like, proletarian, I guess, was proletarianized, one way to think of it, immediately, like, the family just shrinks, like, you know, because you can't, like, if you're a wage worker, it's very difficult to just, like, you know, like, if you were working a field, right, and working the field, right, you know, then people could say, oh, well, you know, you have more kids, you can blah, 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 right? But if you're proletarian, and you're working for someone else, right, for a capitalist, or someone that's petit bourgeois, it just changes that relationship altogether, so... I had a classmate who lived in the same house with his family, his uncle's family and grandparents. Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to point because I'm afraid, like, oh, you know, that's gonna, you know, because you know how the internet is. There's somewhere going down one of these streets here, there is a family that has 16 kids, but they're just Mexican, like they're not Jewish as well. They're just Mexican. You know, all power to them, you know, like, I mean, they're a very nice family, and all of their kids are really, really kind people. Like they're all, I mean, they don't have any, like, toddlers, right? They have, like, you know, they're all much older, because, I mean, they're, like, retired already. But they're a very, very, very kind family. And they're actually one of the families that often get other families together to, like, oh, hey, you know, we need to make sure that, you know, I need to make up names now, that Jennifer, right, has food, right, because, oh, you know, her mom told me, blah, 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 you know, like, again, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because then people do know your business, but, like, it also is that community aspect that, like, you know that if you need something, like, for example, like, you know, like, if you need, like, oh, I need some beans to make for food tonight, oh, I don't have any, can you give me some from your costal, that they have a big bag of beans, you know, people will give you that, that's fine, right, you know, and then also, like, you will be invited to all of the carne asadas and everything, you know, so it's like, it's good in a way, but it's also bad, right, it's like, because then people know your business, so... 3-story house? Oh yeah, no, my family, like, they technically added just one room above. It's not like a full second story, but that was because the previous owners had already applied to build it, but I forget, like they caused damage, and I don't know, it was just weird. Yeah, I lived with my mom in my grandparents' house, but then my mom got married and moved out when I was 2. Yeah, I mean, that's normal. But that's probably a bit different. I'm not Jewish, not from a Jewish area. We don't hardly... What do you think about that? I mean, that's normal to me. And I would say that, I mean, just in America, I mean, just living here, that's pretty common, right? Like, from what I've understood and from what I've seen, is like, oh, if people divorce, oftentimes they'll go live with the parents for a little while, and then, you know, once they're back on their feet, so to speak, then they'll move out, right? With their kids. And that's something that reminds you that having grandparents is a luxury as well, right? Like, it's not just, you know, sometimes it's kind of difficult if you don't have grandparents because you don't have that extra layer of help that you would otherwise have, right? And that's, you know, and of course, you know, like, one thing, again, like, personally for me, like, in this neighborhood, like, I couldn't go out with this. I couldn't go out with makeup on, like, that's still kind of not possible, right? So, you know, there's that. Just so people know, I guess. Multi-generational house. Yeah, exactly. They're a double-edged sword. It's like, then people know all of your shit, right? But, you know, then you can, you know, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. One thing that it did is that it made me appreciate third spaces, right? Spaces that are not home, that are not work, right? That, and also are not commercial, right? That is to say, like, that are not stores, right? Like, oh, like a coffee shop, or, right, some other space where you could hang out with friends, or, you know, go on dates or whatever it might be, right? It made me appreciate that much more, because it's like it's not like you could, as it were, like hang out at home, right? Because I know, like, for a lot of people, like, when they're, you know, it doesn't matter whether they're dating or it's friends or whatever, they'll be like, oh, like, why don't we just go to my house, right? It's like, I can't say that because it's like, one, I have 3 puppies, you know, but like, or even at like say at my grandparents' house, like, that's not it's just not gonna work, because like they like almost never speak in English. I mean, like they know how to speak English, but they all hardly ever speak it. Like, they speak Ladino and Spanish and, you know, stuff like that most of the time. Until I was about 10, we lived in a house with my grandparents and my aunt and uncle and cousins. Then my parents were able to get exactly, like, that's the thing about, like, intergenerational, and that's how I think we should also think about this. That intergenerational wealth that is a home, right? At least as it used to exist, right? Because now, you know, you have this weird, like, starter home, and you move on and you move on and you move on, right? But, like, again, like in Mexico, right? Like, a home, like your parents' house, that's going to be their house forever, right? Like, it's only very recently in history, in Mexico's economic history, that the whole, like, I mean, it's not even really, doesn't really exist now, really. Like, it's not as common. I mean, it's a very tiny minority of people that can do that, in the middle, in what people would call the quote-unquote middle class. To, like, buy a home, sell it, buy another home, right? Like, if, like, my grandparents' house in wherever, right? Like, that's their house until, you know, whatever, you know, and then it gets inherited or whatever it might be, right? So, but it's not like it's a fancy house, right? You know, obviously there's a difference, right, when we're talking about class differences, but you know, it's like that ability to, you know, have these things, right, is something that, you know, that's something that socialism tries to universalize, right? That's why capitalism always tries to make socialism look bad, because it's the idea that nobody should be without such a safety net, right? Like, it shouldn't have to be accumulated before you were even born, right, in order for you to enjoy that safety net. And that's something that I think is often forgotten about when people discuss socialism, is like, the whole point is, like, the reason why everyone in Cuba is guaranteed a home, and I know Cuba is not the best place in the world, right? You know, it's for many reasons, one of them being the U.S. embargo, obviously. And technically the embargo that thus every other country, particularly the Western ones, have with it, is that, you know, like, the interior of homes might look nice, but the exterior, you know, there's still cracking and, you know, time, right? There's, like, and I always think, like, imagine if they had access to all of that stuff, how different it would be. But that very idea that, like, the state already has that safety net of a home, right, that is so difficult to get in the United States, like an actual permanent residence, right, is very difficult, because that's something that's usually done intergenerationally, right? I mean, in fact, when you're buying the house, you're all like, it's already with the thought of, what are you going to give to your kids? You know, it's like this really weird, I mean, I know it's kind of weird that you already have to think about it, but it's like, you know, but then there's also this, like, oh, well, then the value's going to go up, and then you can just sell it, you know? It's like, well, which one do you want, you know? Had so much fun always having my cousins to play with. Yeah, I mean, there's that too. There's more socialization, there's more, you know. My grandfather were 8 kids from my mom's side, my grandmother were 4 from mom's side, my dad, there were 3 and 4, yeah. My best friend's dad has 13 brothers and 2 sisters. They're one of the best families around. Yeah, exactly, like, large families are not the issue. The issue is when it's like, like here with Lev Tahor, which, by the way, Lev Tahor means the pure heart, which says a lot, I think, is that they particularly are making it so that young girls, right, 15-year-olds, are the ones starting families, right? And it's not really their choice, right? Like, they don't know any other option. And they're told that and whilst, even though they're taught more subjects than the young guys are, right? And they can speak English. That doesn't portend very well for their situation, right? Because the control over non-men, I guess is one way of putting it, is something that patriarchy is always concerned with, especially when it comes to the biological essentialist views of people, right? My grandfather, one of his sisters for them. Oh, okay. Hate the idea that adult kids shouldn't live at home. I watched a video recently and they were talking about how we are never done being parented, and that is so true. No, that is completely true, right? I mean, like, your parents, like, let me put it to you like this, like, instead of, like, the weird, like, American thing of, like, your parents own you, right? Like, up until you're 18, right? Like, that weird possessiveness. Instead, it's like, you're in this social relation. I mean, that's what it actually is, parentage, right? You're in this social relationship with them, and that never changes. It just, or rather, that evolves over time, right? Like people have tried to comprehend it, right? When it comes to particularly what is a family, who can be part of a family. But like, one of the things that always happens is that over time and over different experiences, you just, like, it all evolves. Like, all of you are evolving together, right? And that changes the way how you interact with one another, right? But you have this experience, right, that allows you to build that you already have trust, right? Or bridges of trust, so to speak. And that changes things, right? Like, it's not like, oh, a friend I just had, you know, that I just met, right? Or, oh, I have to, or you depending on your landlord, right, for example. Instead, it's an evolution of a social relationship, because that's all the relationship between children and parents are. It's a social relationship, right? Like, as soon as people want to make it into a property one, then they've gone too far, right? Like then it's just like, yeah. Back from my dinner date with Scribbles. Oh, that's awesome. I hope that it went well. You should have the choice to move out, of course, but you should not be derided for your living with your family. Yeah, exactly. Like, for me, like, again, when I dated people that happened to be white, like, they would always, like, make a point about it. Like, okay, I know, but, and then I would say, like, it's a cultural thing. And then they're like, but you live in America now. And I'm not, well, one of them did. And then I was like, fuck you, you know? I was like, fuck you. I'm not gonna deal with this shit. Like, as soon as, he was one of those people that thought that, being queer, or, you know, being gay means that, like, you can, as it were, like, access other people's struggles, if that makes sense, right? Like, oh, like, therefore you can comment on other people's struggles or whatever. And, like, I didn't know this, right, at the time, because we dated for a very short period. But, like, as soon as this, like, he said that, I was all like, fuck you. And, you know, I don't give a fuck about you. But later on, like, it became more and more, because I still knew the guy. He was at my undergrad, right? And so then he went full hog, right? And I'm like, oh gosh, I dodged so many bullets, like, so many bullets. Because at first he seemed really nice, but as soon as there was this, like, affirmation that I wasn't an assimilationist, right, for cultures and, you know, and for, you know, gender, etc., that drove him up the wall, and that's what made him say that stupid shit. But because he said it, because I got him to say it, you know, because it was like date 2, so I don't know, was that really dating? I don't know, but like date 2, I already got him to, like, go full hog, because I was like, no, like, my culture is my culture, and you do not have the right to tell me how my culture should be. You know, with your sifted flour white ass, you know, like, no. The problem with multi-generational households are a lot of people in potential choke points. That's true. Your parents don't get along with your partner partner's not getting along with your grandparent. That's true, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And again, it all depends on the relationship between the the parent and the, I don't want to say the child, right? Because that's technically incorrect, but I guess just for lack of a better word that comes to mind right now, the child, right, or in the social relationship. And yeah, I mean, like, that's especially when it comes to things like partners, right? Especially like if your parents tolerate, right, your gender identity or your sexuality, but they don't really accept it, right? That's, and you know, there is a huge minefield that will get triggered every single time that, you know, or that will get triggered as soon as that happens, right? Like as soon as there is a time that you bring home, you know, someone, and you guys are gonna be, you know, in you know, meeting your parents or whatever. Growing up, my grandpa would always be there all day when the parents were at work. He would make us shrimp ramen noodles and Kool-Aid, and he would serve us 3 girls Kool-Aid in his fancy cups. Aww. So much different when my parents got home. I was just at home alone with TV after school. See, look, that my grandparents, what they did is, again, this is different because of course, you know, is they would pick me up from school and take me to their house. So then that way we would spend like the late afternoon, like when my parents got off work, all together. So we could all eat dinner as a family. So then that way I wouldn't be alone, but also so that then, like, you know, there was and again, I appreciated that even back then, because it meant, for example, like my grandparents had a lot of books in the home. Not that my parents didn't, but they had a lot of just a different variety of books. So and like and so like I always liked, you know, and then they also let me have like a whole room, right, where like I could paint, I could draw, I could, you know, whatever, blah blah blah. And so you know, within the boundaries of their home, also knowing that my parents are going to show up, and of course it's better because they got along, right? So, you know, I knew that I was going to get lunch and, or, you know, or a snack or whatever, and I also knew that I was going to be, you know, taken care for, and everything. And then I knew that at the end, my parents, or even if we didn't have dinner together, right, like they at least would chat, right, with each other and be like, oh, you know, what are you doing, blah blah blah. Oh, do you want to come over Sunday, or, you know, whatever, or do you want to, you know, do Shabbos at our house or whatever, right? We have a social housing that you have a right to buy. Oh yeah, from Margaret Thatcher. Yeah, I remember reading about that. Yeah, people are saying, yeah, that's true. I used to live with my grandparents, and they died when I was 3. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. May their memory be a blessing. I'm kind of jealous at my 8 and 10 older cousins. They at least having some memory. I have nothing other than a few photos. Oh, that's so sad. I'm so sorry to hear that. That's really sad. It sounds like ethnicity and race being mixed in with nationality, what you said there. What do you mean, Jamie? I saw that you said that a while ago, so I want to understand what you're trying to say. If you mean that, like, the person that I was dating that was like an Anglo-American, like, you know, like John Smith, quote unquote, right? I spent my whole life far away from my relatives, and so I spent a lot of time alone at home when my mom was at work. I only saw my grandparents. Oh, okay. Also, hi Zara. I'm so glad to see that you made it to the stream today. Thank you. Yeah, and so, like, with my grandparents, that existed. That was something that happened when I was a little kid. When I got older, then kind of like what Zara's describing is kind of what ended up happening. But that was because of multiple reasons, like a lot of family moved, right? Like in 2008 or whatever, right? You know, they ended up moving to other parts of California or moving to other states, like, you know, to find jobs, etc. So, so yeah, I totally understand that, Zara. And for me, it's like once that happened, once there was like a movement of a chunk, not you know, it's not a small chunk, but I mean, at least it's not insignificant, right? It was enough to where, you know, it's you know, it's palpable, right? Like after that, then that kind of like stuff kind of fell apart, right? Especially because when my grandparents moved away, they were kind of the ones that held everything together, right? So, you know, once that's gone, yeah, exactly. And then, yeah, same thing. And then also, like, remember, like, when I'm in yeshiva, I'm in New York, right? That's really far away from LA, if you don't know, you know? like, like where I ended up by the end of it is in New York. So, you know, I was really far away by that point. And, like, again, like, the older I got, the less contact there was. But, like, when I was young, there still was that contact. So I enjoyed that. But, Jamie, I really want to hear what you mean by that, because I don't want to misunderstand or misconstrue what you're saying.
Steve, there were a lot of false allegations on our community because there were girls that had babies before the 17. There was one that married exactly by the 16.
My 13-year-old daughter, she wants to get married. She wants to be a mother.
If their career in life is to be a mother, so they want to start a career already.
There must be some girls.
Oh no! Oh my gosh! Oy oy. One, calling it a career, I mean, you know, there's one thing about reproductive labor that is typically resigned to, or assigned, I guess is a better way of putting it, to the socially constructed idea of a woman, right? Of reproductive labor is one thing, but they're talking about it like the whole having children is also like a career, right? That's a really weird way of thinking about that. I don't know. Yeah, raising children is a career, like that for sure. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like reproductive labor and all of that other stuff, totally understand. But it's kind of weird, like the justification, like, oh, even though they're 13, like if they want to become mothers now, they want to be mothers now. You know, that's a weird thing to be like defending. I don't know. But again, that's why we're watching this documentary, right? Because, you know, I spoke about it with Alt Miss Frizzle about how, like, usually most of the stuff speaks about, you know, evangelical Christians, and this one is one that is not even recognized as being like in any way Orthodox Jewish. So it's like, you know, this has no real relation to any other movement. So
say, I'm not ready yet. There must be.
There is girls that even the...
Yes, that is very awkward. And like, and like what they said earlier in the film was that they will like fly out young girls so then that way they can get married in the US states that have lower marriage ages. Because then, like, you know, like they recognize it in Canada, right? And I'm like, that's wrong. Like, that's just more, like, that's beyond morally wrong. Like, that should just not happen. But the whole point is, like, they're so insular that, like, again, even the mothers, right, are kind of like, you know, are also participating in this, like, I don't know. I don't even know how to word it. I don't know.
Parents feel that their kids are not ready by the 16.
And then what happens?
We wait.
Once they are mothers, many hours will be spent in the kitchen. But the rules when it comes to cooking in Lev Tahor reach far beyond the kosher norm.
Do you eat rice?
Rice, no. It has problems with worms.
Worms?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. One of the best things about growing up Sephardi was that on Pesach, on Passover, Sephardi people can eat rice, but Ashkenazi people can't eat any grains at all, but we can eat rice. And my mom would always make sopa de arroz. Oh, it was so good. Like, she makes this like special, like a big pot for Pesach, right? And I just like hearing like, oh no, we don't even eat rice. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like,
chicken and
especially because it's dried. You know what I mean? Like like you can wash the rice if you wanted to. And also rice is typically washed also. But it's not like it would be alive.
Chicken eggs are forbidden. All vegetables, unless organic, must be peeled.
Even a tomato, you would peel it to...
Do you consume bread if you don't eat grains? So during Pesach, during Passover, you're supposed to eat matzah, which is unleavened bread. That's true. Not enough people know about washing rice, exactly. Because that is something that, like, again, like in both of Mexican and Jewish communities, like they always wash the rice, but or you know, in whatever way. Hi Sarah, it's so good to see you. But yeah, you can't consume bread. You can't consume anything that's leavened. So like anything that has yeast in it and, you know, rises, right? So matzah, and my mom actually likes that because, yeah, the rice must be washed, yeah. That's why I like that concern doesn't make any sense. And then I think they just said, let me go back. I'm gonna go back like, no, to be quite honest, no. I mean, this isn't as it were my beat to talk about like this stuff. I just wanted to bring it up since I'm Jewish, was Hasidic, and you know, can sort of speak to how they're different, but I don't typically like talk about stuff like this, like cults, etc. This is just like a special episode.
Has problems with worms.
Worms?
Yes.
Chicken and chicken eggs are forbidden. All
What? That, okay. How can you have Shabbat dinner without chicken? I'm sorry, like, I know that's a very basic thing to say, but like, I mean, there's even like a dumb old joke, like, you know, like those like old cartoon little things that are essentially like old-fashioned memes, where it's like a turkey saying like, oh, you know, I hate Thanksgiving, blah blah blah, and then like the chicken responds, oh, just wait until you hear about Shabbos, you know. Because again, like chicken is typically what's made on Shabbat, so as the meat to eat. So, so to hear that they don't use eggs either, which are not even seen as meat, they're seen as neutral. I mean, that's just wow.
Vegetables, unless organic, must be peeled.
Even a tomato, you would peel a tomato?
Yes.
Why? Does anyone know? Like, what? Can you... I mean, I guess you could peel a tomato. I mean, you know, like you do that when you make, like, pasta sauce. Right, where you cut it with, like, an X. And then you boil, you know, whatever. And then you, like, take off the skin. That's one thing. But when it's fresh, they're peeling it then. That... I don't know. I'm so mad when I'm picking my tomatoes and the skin peels off. Yeah, exactly. Also, yes, as Stream Element says, if you'd like to help my research, you can always visit my throne. Or also, you know, subscribe.
Of course, the most distinctive feature of the women in Lev Tahor is their long black chador. It isn't something they've always worn. Not too many years ago, they used to wear skirts and color.
Whose decision was this?
Ours.
Again, it's very strange too because the chador is associated with Islam, right? Because it's particularly Iran, right? So it's interesting that like they went well above and beyond to only wearing the black chadors.
But it doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that women have to wear black.
A woman has to be modest, so if you think about it, modest is not thread or yellow or striky or tight.
All of the chadors the women make themselves. But
isn't that strange that like in Western culture, right? Like, and I'm, you know, of course using that term, you know, lightly or, you know, with the irony of it not being real, but you know what I mean. What people would try to call, right? That certain colors are seen as immodest, like a color. Like, oh, like if you wear a chador that's yellow, that's immodest. But if you wear a chador that's gray, that's modest. Like, it does the same thing. It covers up the same parts of the body. Right? If it has stripes, how do the, like, what is it about the stripes that make it, I don't know, am I missing something here? I don't know. Now, I will say that obviously, as someone who was Hasidic, right, people tend to wear darker colors, especially like the men that, you know, they wear black. But like the reasoning isn't necessarily out of modesty. Although men also have modesty, you know, rules, so to speak, or laws upon them. But I don't know, it's just weird to me, like a color being seen as immodest. I don't know.
While we were visiting, they were sewing something new. A sleep sack.
Okay, so this is basically all done, you see?
It's a design they came up with after child protection workers reported girls with fungus on their feet from leaving their stockings on, even in bed.
We want to sleep with our feet covered.
What? No. No. Lo. Ani lo mivin. Ani lo mivin. That's bad. Who does that to their child? Like, modesty. When you're asleep? Like, who's seeing you when you're asleep? And wearing stockings and never taking them off? To where they develop fungal infections? That's just, oh my god. This is just so bad. Oh my god. Like, and obviously they're not showing it, right? But just like thinking about it, like I'm thinking about, like, you know, like people I know in my own life that are still, you know, living in the Hasidic world and like didn't have to go through this. And I'm just like, I'm so glad, you know, that they didn't. But I'm also like, oh my god, I can't believe this does happen. Like, oh my god.
To be modest and covered, and especially next to your man. Even your husband.
Okay, like, so the whole modesty thing is really interesting because, well, not their view, is because technically speaking, it's not seen as strange in Orthodox Judaism for the husband and the wife to have separate beds. In fact, that's typical for many reasons. So, yeah. But the whole modesty thing, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, it just, like, that's, like, if you're just in the bedroom with your husband, like, you can't even take off your chador? And you have to put on the sleep sack? Like, what about him? Like you know, like that's always the question in my mind. Is like, okay, but what do the men have to do, right? Like the, you know, the assumed men, right? Like, what do they have to do? Because if what they have to do isn't commensurate, I mean, this is accepting, so to speak, that, you know, whatever, right? Like, I'm not saying it should be this way, right? I want to make that very clear. But if it does exist as such, why is it that men, for example, don't have to keep the same level of modesty as women, right? Which, of course, that's because of patriarchy, right? But, like, it's, even seeing this, it's like, it's literally physically harming their children, right? And they still want to find a way to do that. And even to an extreme, like...
Even your husband can't see your feet.
I won't be comfortable, you should see my feet.
To what extent can someone in this community be an individual?
Sure, they could be an individual, but everybody is happy with the same way, so there's no need to be different.
People that join the community.
What does that even mean? People are so happy to be part of the community that they feel no need to be different. But they are different. They are. Like, they just are. Like, it's just impossible for them not to be. I don't know. That's such a weird... I never, like, the question of individuality is something that, like, within the boundaries of tznius, right, of modesty, in the Hasidic movement that I was part of, or the Hasidic sect that I was part of, you could, you know, whatever you wanted, pretty much, like, within those boundaries, right? Like women wear color, or, you know, whatever. Men could wear, you know, t-shirts, blah blah blah, right? Like that. As long as certain requirements are met, right, that's fine. But the idea of, like, even, like, individuality, and I'm guessing they mean it conceptually, not like as it were, as I just described it, right, where it's like manifested, right, advertised. That's really weird. But I mean, Miss Frizzle, I mean, I'm guessing, like, this really goes I mean, this is also at the heart of a lot of the stuff that you look at as well, right? Where it's like they argue that there's no need to be different, so to speak, right? Like, oh, well, everyone's an individual, but we're all one, so to speak, you know.
Community is because the community is what it is, and that's why they're here. So why should people try to be different?
Has your daughter ever said to you, Dad, I want to wear short sleeves today?
Never, because I must say God blessed me with very good children.
But beneath the veil of life in Lev Tahor, youth protection workers say there is something more sinister at play. Disturbing allegations of underage marriage, filthy living conditions, and extreme control.
Oh gosh, like I don't even know what to say about that. That's just, oh goodness gracious, that's okay, so I mean, it's hard to watch this. I mean, like, and I know that, you know, also for people that have also grown up, you know, in, say, the LDS church, or, you know, an evangelical church, or even Catholics, right? Like the people that are like, you know, their family is Opus Dei or SSPX. Like, I totally, you know, it's just like, wow. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is just like, whoa, what? Like, what is this, you know? So I'm thinking that we either if Miss Frizzle would want to continue watching it next week for the next stream, that's fine. I would be cool doing that, or I could just play it in Discord and finish it up. But otherwise, we're gonna raid Polly, so that way, you know, I can make dinner. I mean, I know I was kind of like snacking, but I want to make dinner, especially because I want to feed my little puppies. So we'll just let Polly know. We can watch it next week. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I'm gonna go feed the little puppies and everything, and just let Polly know that I'll be there in a few minutes. I just need to make some food. Okay. Okay, everyone, get in the little robot. Bye.